you all know what sides you are, right? All right, cool. That's perfect. Then everyone ready to go?
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. I was told like 1 minute warning is what you all were expecting. Did you all want any other time signals from me? I do like a 1 minute, and then when it gets down to 0, I'll start doing like a countdown or something for you. Cool. And you can all time yourselves too on your phones or whatever if you want as well. Awesome. First affirmative first then, that's 5 minutes.
Can I start now?
Yes.
My name is Keely Dietz, and today I'll be affirming the Assault Weapons Ban of 2023. The Pro Team will prove that by supporting the Assault Weapons Ban of 2023, we will create a safer America for future generations. According to Title 11 of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, assault weapons are specific makes and models of military-style semi-automatic firearms and other semi-automatics with multiple military-style features such as detachable magazines, flash suppressors, folding rifle stocks, and threaded barrels for attaching silencers, and outlaws most large-capacity magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition. We believe that no American should own an assault weapon because Americans have no need for guns that fire more rounds without needing to reload, and fire bullets that hit targets with a higher velocity that covers more surface area upon impact. According to EverytownResearch.org, shootings where assault weapons were used resulted in over 5 times as many people shot, twice as many people killed, and 20 times as many people wounded on average per incident. In the Journal of Urban Health, Christopher Copra, a senior fellow and co-director of the Evidence-Based Police Policing Program at the Center for Evidence-Based Crime Policy, assault weapons and other high-capacity semi-automatics together generally account for 22 to 36% of guns, with some estimates upwards 40% involving cases of violence, including murders of the police. The Crime Control Act of 1994, Subtitle A, banned the manufacture, transfer, and possession of certain semi-automatic firearms designated as assault weapons and large-capacity ammunition magazines. According to a study done by NYU Lincoln Health, during the 10-year period that the Crime Control Act was in effect, mass shooting fatalities were 70% less likely to occur compared to periods before an active ban. In the Journal of Urban Health, Copra also found that the trend analysis indicate a high-capacity semi-automatics have gone from 33 to 112% since the expiration of the federal ban, a trend that has coincided with recent growth in shootings nationwide. Statistics from the National Shooting Sports Foundation and Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives show that one of the most popular assault weapons, the AR-15, accounted for 1.2% of all manufactured guns in 1990. In 2020, this gun made up for 23.4% of all guns produced in the U.S. for that year. The rate in which the United States is manufacturing and selling these guns will only lead to more deaths and Americans having to live in fear that at any moment someone can come kill a room full of people in a matter of seconds, with the standard AR-15 alone firing up to 45 rounds per minute. In an article by the Washington Post, journalists Mark Berman and Todd Frankel discuss an instance in 2019 where a gunman burst into a synagogue and killed 1 person and injured 3 people. This is just one example of the many homicides committed with assault weapons. A study in 1993 in New York City published by the Bureau of Justice Statistics discovered that 60% of homicides had assault weapons involved. This specific instance only ended as a homicide because the gunman used a 10-round magazine and was ignorant on how to reload the gun. Catherine Schweidt, a retired FBI agent who ran the Bureau's active shooter program, says that magazine capacity has helped determine how many people live or die. By allowing Americans to possess these high assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, they can unload more bullets at a faster time and kill at a faster rate, only putting more lives at risk. According to Luis Claveras, a research professor at Columbia University, the average mass shooter can take 8 to 10 seconds to reload their gun because oftentimes people are miseducated. Regardless if a person does or does not know how to use a gun, these seconds can save a person's life by giving them a chance to escape. In an article by the National Institute of Justice, most individuals who engaged in mass shootings use handguns, 77.2% and 25.1% use assault rifles in the commission of their crimes. The assault weapons ban would ban a semi-automatic pistol with a fixed ammunition feeding device that has the capacity to accept more than 10 rounds. By this definition, these findings become irrelevant, with many handguns used in these mass shootings becoming illegal under the assault weapons ban. Therefore, many sources who argue that the assault weapons ban will not decrease the number of lives killed are false. Many of the examples the U.S. Concealed Carry Association brings up, such as Virginia Tech shooting and the Clinton, Texas shooting, both used guns that held more than 10 rounds except as detachable magazines. The number of extended magazines, those with more than 10 rounds, recovered by Chicago police more than doubled from 2018 to last year, up to 459 to 924 in the records show. The Los Angeles Police Department has recovered significantly greater numbers of large-capacity ammunition magazines, from 38 in 2003 to anywhere from 151 to 940 each year between 2004 and 2010. Although not much research has been conducted on the topic of what crimes are committed with guns that can accept detachable magazines, it is safe to assume that by enforcing the assault weapons ban in 2023, we can expect to see gun violence decline. This gives Americans at risk of gun violence an upper hand by giving them a chance at life. It is important we ask ourselves what is more important, the lives of Americans or our right to bear assault weapons or semi-automatic pistols. Ultimately, it is up to us to stand up for what is right and protect ourselves from the inevitable gun violence of assault weapons. By supporting the assault weapons ban in 2023, we will put an end to importation, selling, and manufacturing of semi-automatic assault weapons or large capacity ammunition-fitting devices and decrease gun violence in America, saving more American lives in the process.
Okay, now first negative. I didn't start that. Oh, sorry. I was just clearing the time from the last one. Yeah, you can start whenever you want.
Hello, I'm Riley, and my teammates are Meredith, Elizabeth, and Stevie, and today I will be opposing the assault weapons ban of 2023, Senate Bill 25, on the basis that it directly violates Americans' right to protect and defend themselves. The negative team will prove that the passing of Senate Bill 25 will cause harm by impeding on the rights in the Constitution, which states in the Second Amendment that the right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The main question being asked is, what is the independent reason why federal assault weapons should not be banned? Senate Bill 25 was introduced by Senator Feinstein, defines assault weapons as a weapon that requires a separate pull of the trigger to fire each cartridge and utilizes a portion of the energy of a firing cartridge to extract the fired cartridge case and chamber the next round. But should we really rely on Senator Feinstein as a leader of the moral action? She has missed 58 Senate votes in the past month and had to step down from her post in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and many Democrats are currently calling for her resignation. The bill itself has loopholes, including grandfathering of weapons and not being effective for assault weapons made before the bill was enacted. Overall, banning what the bill considers to be assault weapons will not do enough to prevent harm and actively make the lives of Americans worse because it violates their constitutional rights to guns and individual liberties granted in the Constitution. Assault weapons should not be banned because there are better and safer approaches. The framework for today's debate is that the bill is not an effective method of gun control and would fail to have true impact on gun violence in the United States. There are better ways to prevent these shootings, such as addressing mental health issues and the establishment of national red flag laws and uniform gun licensing. Although shootings in the U.S. are common and mass shootings are very sad, creating a ban on assault rifles would not solve the problem at its root. There are many factors that go into the assault weapon shootings. Although assault weapons can be harmful, handguns vastly outsell assault weapons in the U.S. Americans themselves do not even agree on the harm that is created or stopped by guns. According to a study done by the Pew Research Center, around a third of Americans say that if more people owned guns, there would be more crime. The same percentage say that there would be no difference in crime, while 31% say that there would be less crime. How can we agree on a direct course of action if the issue itself cannot even be agreed upon? Americans are also unable to agree on what an assault weapon actually is. The term assault weapon is highly contentious and vague. How can a bill reflect the beliefs and rights of the American people if the American people cannot agree on what an assault weapon is? The first contention point is that assault weapons are a small part of a large problem. Although assault weapons have been used to commit violence, there are fewer instances of assault weapons being used in crimes. Assault weapons, primarily assault-type rifles, account for 2 to 12% of guns used in crime in general, while most are done with handguns, rifles, and shotguns. In fact, handguns make up 45.7% of weapons used in U.S. homicides. The bill also ignores the bigger contributor of banning guns, not stopping people from getting guns, using illegal or other means, and mental health problems. Japan has some of the strictest gun laws in the world, but in 2021, their former prime minister was assassinated by a man who built a homemade gun. Correspondingly, Japan also has a high suicide rate due to mental illness and low depression prevalence rates. The ban also violates Constitution and impedes on American public's constitutional rights. The Second Amendment gives people the right to guns without their constitutional rights being violated. It also violates individual rights given to Americans in the 19th and 4th Amendment. The 19th Amendment says that anything not directly stated in the Constitution is left up to the people, not the federal government, while the 14th Amendment says that individual rights should be protected. Even if we ignore the Second Amendment and how to apply 18th century wording to modern America, impeding on individual rights to own assault weapons can only lead to more individual rights being taken away. There are other issues that need to be addressed in order to stop these shootings. This bill acknowledges none of them and leaves room for the advancement of crime. It has many vulnerabilities and holes that make the implementation ineffective.
The first crossfire.
So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to define what an assault weapon is according to Title 11 of the Gun Control Act without your computer.
I did. It said that it uses a magazine and a cartridge and...
But that's not what an assault weapon is. And you yourself said that there's apparently there's no set in stone on what an assault weapon is when Title 11 clearly states that there's specific makes and models of military-style semi-automatic firearms and other semi-automatics with multiple military-style features. Can you name what these features are?
I named some of them that they have that's laid out in the bill.
Okay, well, one of the things you said was that this bill violates people from being able to defend themselves. By banning assault weapons, we're not infringing on the right to bear arms because individuals are still able to purchase and possess other firearms as right as self-defense, hunting, and recreation.
But handguns make up for more crimes and U.S. homicides.
Okay, but these handguns can still be modified and they're still assault weapons. So a handgun can still be modified to become an assault weapon. As it states in the bill, if it has detachable magazines, folding rifle stocks, threaded barrels, this can still happen. And as I said, in Chicago, they collected about 924 handguns with extended magazines. So
Well, then why aren't we banning handguns instead of assault rifles?
we are banning handguns that actually perform the same duties as assault rifles. Another thing is we will still be able to grandfather, and by enforcing this ban, we are going to affect the crime policies because, as I said, many of these handguns have been modified.
Yes. All right. Second app speaker.
Am I good to start?
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Alrighty. My name is Yellow Brandt, and I support the assault weapons ban of 2023. The opposing side has presented cases with troubling discrepancies that may reveal a narrative inconsistent with reality. The Second Amendment will be violated by the assault weapons ban, as our opponent argues. Ignoring the fact that the Second Amendment's interpretation has been highly contentious throughout American history anyway, not all guns will be taken away. According to a summary of the assault weapons ban by 2023 proposal by Senator Mark R. Warner, the restriction would only, quote, ban the sale, transfer, manufacture, and import of military-style assault weapons and high-capacity magazines and other high-capacity ammunition feeding devices. Not only this, but according to BradyUnited.org, the assault weapons ban of 2023 would allow guns already in circulation to remain with their current owners. Quote, any gun or large-capacity magazine that is lawfully possessed at the day of enactment will be grandfathered in and exempted from the ban. Our opponent argues that handguns are the issue, not assault weapons. This is false information. According to the statistics provided by BradyUnited.org, 155% more people are shot in incidents where assault weapons or large-capacity magazines are used. It is indeed true that assault weapons are used in a low percentage of mass shootings. This ironically strengthens our point. Despite being present in only a fraction of mass shootings, 85% of fatalities in mass shootings are caused by assault weapons according to Giffords.org, which uses official statistics. This is important because it emphasizes how deadly every single assault weapon can be when such a small percent of firearms used in mass shootings account for almost 90% of all fatalities. Our opponent also argues that mental illness and similar issues, not actually guns, being the problem. The Mental Health Matters Act was opposed by the traditionally pro-gun Republican Party, with 205 out of 206 House Republicans opposing the bill, which had no correlation with assault weapon bans or any weapon restrictions at all. If mental illness or anything that's not guns are the root cause behind gun violence, then why are pro-gun legislators not willing to solve this problem either? Is it possible that mental health is being used as a scapegoat rather than being a true point of concern? To help our opponents see that firearm restrictions do save lives, let's take a look at different gun-related death rates between states with different gun laws. Let's start with the United States as a whole, which averages 13.7 gun-related deaths per 100,000 residents, according to the CDC. Massachusetts, a state with an assault weapons ban, enjoys a mere 3.4 gun-related deaths per 100,000 residents, about 3 times less gun-related deaths than the American average. On the other hand, in Mississippi, one of the many states with permitless carry, has 33.9 gun-related deaths per 100,000 residents. That's almost 10 times the amount of gun-related deaths as Massachusetts. That's the difference between 1 in 29,000 Massachusetts residents and 1 in 3,000 Mississippi residents being killed by firearms. The clear correlation between gun violence and gun restrictions between states seen here gives us the most modern evidence that firearm restrictions do save lives. Our opponent also argues that banning assault weapons will not actually solve the problem of mass shootings. Luckily for us, we actually have a historical precedent to prove the efficacy of assault weapons bans in the United States of America. According to Giffords.org, during the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, an act that restricted the sale of assault weapons, there was a 37% decline in gun massacres and a 70% decline in assault weapons traced to crime, proving that a ban does indeed prevent deaths, which should be more important than anything else, should it not? Our opponents' views on the assault weapon ban of 2023 highlight problematic hypocrisies between their claimed ethics and what they practice in reality, valuing a small subset of countless guns over the lives of thousands of Americans. We hope that by refuting a relevant point made by the opposing team, that they will reconsider the relevance and accuracy of their views.
All right, second negative.
All right, my name is Meredith Kirk, and I will be giving the second refutation speech. Okay. So you said in your first speech that you want a safer America. So do I. And you've also put some words in our mouths with saying that our side doesn't care about mental health. I would argue that that's very much not true, at least for us personally. About the safer America thing, nothing in your ban will create a safer America. And you also said in your first speech that 40% of guns are assault weapons, if I heard you right, and that, I'm not sure where you got that stat, but the most commonly owned gun in America is a pistol, according to Texas Gun Club, and that's defined as a handgun, so that would make that curious there. And it was also mentioned in your first speech that it's safe to assume that it will stop deaths, but we can assume, based on examples from history, that the illegal trade of guns will be increased. So the historical example I have there is one from not America, but Australia. So in 1996, there was a massive shooting in Australia, and this resulted in an all-out firearm ban. Like, they went out and took guns away from people. Like, this was a full-on gun ban in Australia. And this did lower the amount of gun deaths overall, but it did nothing for the altogether violent crime rate, which stayed consistent until 2003. In 2003, the violent crime rate plummeted, and this was because Australia cracked down on the black market gun trade, just illegal activity in general. So we see that laws limiting the sales by private gun dealerships having almost no effect on violent crime rates, because they mainly target law-abiding citizens who weren't going to commit crime to begin with. And we can't really say that the 1996 bans did anything at all. Criminals are the problem, not guns. And how would the bill be effective if it allows for grandfathering, like the people that already have assault weapons, to keep their assault weapons, especially since it has a specific case where people can grandfather their weapons down in the bill itself. And something else to mention, self-defense is a very big point to bring up here. the most commonly, the group of people that most commonly own guns are the people at the highest risk in America, minority communities. For example, in 2019, 44% of homicide victims were black, despite the fact they only make up 13% of the population. And gun ownership among the black community in America is up by 58.2% because reportedly they feel a greater need to protect themselves. And gun laws have historically been used to keep black people from protecting themselves if we go back to days with slavery. So this is they've historically been used to attack black communities. And in 2017, more than 2.9 million women were victims of a violent crime, and most of them knew their aggressor. And according to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, there's been a 77% rise in female gun ownership from 2005 to 2020. And today, nearly 30% of new women gun owners are black, according to a 2021 National Firearms Survey. So we see here that laws wanting to take people's guns away are people want to own guns for self-defense. That's the most common reason. And these laws are targeting the most vulnerable people in America, minorities and women, as you see here. Right, you mentioned in your second speech how the states that have increased gun laws have decreased gun deaths. So then I would like to question if these states have, like how the violent crime rates have correlated with that. Because as we know, there are multiple ways that someone can be violent. And guns are not the things that cause these violent acts. There are other factors that do. Certain mental disorders can cause an increase in violent crime. And just 1 year of higher education decreases an individual's likelihood to commit a murder by 30%, and 70% of child murderers were raised by single parents, and poor cities have a much higher rate of violent crime. So if we actually want to decrease the rate of deaths, which I think everyone on any side can agree this is what we want overall, we don't want people to be murdered, there are other ways that we can help that. And gun laws, as we saw with Australia, are not the way to do that. You have to target criminals, and you have to target people that would become criminals if left on their own.
Alrighty, so one of the things that you brought up multiple times was the Australia buyback, which was, as you said, a mandatory buyback, which is not at all what we're going for here in America. Not only are we grandfathering assault weapons, so they'll still be here in a way, but we're not targeting any other gun besides assault weapons, and therefore it's a moot point to compare it to the Australian buyback.
Right, but that was like the most extreme level of what could happen. Like you're saying, taking away guns would like keep people from dying from guns, which of course does make sense. It did keep people from dying from guns, but it didn't keep people from dying overall. It did nothing for the violent crime rate. So you're saying it's an irrelevant point to bring up. I would say because of how extreme it is, it's a perfect thing to bring up because you're wanting to instate something lighter and arguing that it would like have some sort of change when it didn't at all in the past.
I agree that it's an extreme ban, and that's why we're not proposing a ban that extreme.
Right.
I think that if we're able to, but with allocate resources towards increased therapy, increased minimum wage, which by the way goes back to another one of your points, talking about the violent crime rates unrelated to gun deaths in the states that have gun control and assault weapons bans. Typically those states also have access to increased minimum wage, increased therapy, etc., and therefore the violent crime is down, including outside of guns. So yes, Australian buyback is irrelevant because that is way more extreme than what we're going for and just does not work in the same way that it works here in America. And then to answer your question, yes, the assault weapons ban also typically relates to more resources allocated to other places.
Right. So
You also brought up that a black market might be a concern. But for that, it's kind of a thing of like, the longer we wait, the more guns there are going to be in a black market. Inevitably, yes, a black market will open if we are to ban assault weapons. Anytime anything is banned, there's going to be a black market. But that's never going to overpace or outpace the legal selling of assault weapons, and eventually it'll drop back down.
well, would it not be better to have legal ways for people to okay.
All right, the third ask.
Hi, my name is Macaulay Aaron, and I'm on the femicide By banning assault weapons in the United States, we will create a safer America for current and future generations from importation, selling, manufacturing, transferring, or possession of semi-automatic assault weapons or large capacity ammunition devices. According to the information from the Colorado Sun, another school shooting, 3 kids and 3 adults killed by AR-15 gunfire, and event needs a closer look. On the morning of the nightmare school shooting in Nashville, one claimed that 1 of 6 victims' lives. Although 90% of American gun deaths involve handguns, the AR-15s have been used in the 10 of the 17 mass lethal shootings since 2012. The Nashville shooting doesn't make the top 17, which sadly tells us much about gun violence in America, which is now leading to a cause of death among those under age of 20, but it's only to honor the parents who had the courage to allow the post, using autopsy reports to replicate the deaths of the children who listened. Usually we can look even if we want to see the crime scene photos are really shown, but the news media in detail. There are rightly seen as two gruesome and human face. And so the body shadow impact of the high velocity bullet delivered by the AR-15s is rarely seen by the public and maybe more importantly by the people who write laws governing their use. But the parents of the 15-year-old Wayne, who was killed at a Marjory Stone Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and the parents of Noah Poser, 6-year-old, who was killed at Sandy Hook Elementary, Newtown, Connecticut, agreed to simulate introduce the scene. The story first shows how the impact of the bullet fired by AR-15 differs in lethality from a 9mm bullet fired from a handgun. Then it shows how the AR-15 rounds destroyed 2 young bodies. There is, however, growing evidence of the ban on the large capacity magazines, in particular, might reduce the number of those killed and injured in non-focused shootings. A day after the Boulder, Colorado mass shootings, in which 10 people were killed by a gunman in a grocery store on March 22nd, Biden spoke in support of the 2 House-approved bills that would expand background checks to include private sales. Biden also returned to another campaign promise of gun control to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. Mental illness is a serious problem in America. However, our culture of protecting guns at the cost of innocent lives has caused more mass shootings than what the mental illness has. Time after time, we hear about mass murders, particularly young school shooters wanting to be the next notorious school shooter. For example, a recovered video from the phone of Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland school shooter, records him exclaiming, "I'm going to be the next American school shooter," taking pride that his name will be on the news. He also says, "My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15. This is just one of the niche examples of the American toxic gun culture, providing unreasonable and unnecessary protection to assault weapons that do more harm than good. HBO's Real Sports with Ryan Gumba episode 203 shows a 13-year-old boy buying a .22 caliber rifle through a gun show on his first try with no background check. Despite the being refused lottery to pick beer, cigarettes, and adult magazines, not only were no questions asked, but this was in front of the countless attendees and staff members at a gun show. This is yet another example of America's gun culture protecting guns in an unreasonable and contradictory manner. So to end the point, when I say, as I am on the affirmative side of the assault weapons ban, that we need more restrictions on guns and AR-15s.
Third next.
I would like to go through our summary today by focusing on narrowing in on why we believe that the assault weapons ban of 2023 is not relevant to the reduction of gun violence and ultimately creates more harm than good. Our stance is simple. Assault weapons are a red herring to the true perpetrators of violence in America. Furthermore, it'd be a waste of precious time, money, and resources to focus on banning something that is statistically shown to be used in a smaller portion of mass gun violence in this country. We maintain that there are aspects of this ban that have been implemented into the past that are currently active in select states that have seen inadequate results as a whole. Such policies give too much leeway to multiple loopholes where guns will continue to land in the hands of violent criminals. You mentioned the 1994 ban. This was a ban on assault weapons. It banned the manufacture, transfer, and possession of certain semi-automatic firearms designed as assault weapons at large capacity in detachable ammunition magazines. Furthermore, the law exempted grandfather guns and magazines, which refers to weapons and attachments manufactured before the ban took effect. However, according to the U.S. Department of Justice, shortening the gun's barrel by a few millimeters or sporticizing a rifle by removing its pistol grip and replacing it with the thumb hole in the stock, for example, was sufficient enough to transform a banned weapon into a legal substitute. The gun makers simply make the exact gun with the same lethality. There's no doubt in our minds that gun makers will repeat this process under the assault weapons ban. Additionally, the U.S. Department of Justice notes that while the ban was being debated in Congress, the production of guns that were to be banned saw an increase in the market. Just like the assault weapons ban of 2023, the 1994 ban exempts guns and attachments that were owned by Americans before the ban is effective. If the 2023 ban appears that it might go into effect, those who disagree with the ban will simply stock up on these weapons before it is implemented, solidifying more of these weapons into circulation. I also wanted to go more into self-defense. According to the Georgetown survey, it was estimated that guns are used in 1.67 million times a year in self-defense in the United States. With increased violence surrounding minority communities, they are naturally reaching for guns for self-defense. Guns make the most vulnerable citizens feel safer. However, the chances that they will remain safe under the assault weapon ban is slim. Criminals will find ways to acquire these guns already in circulation, leaving the bad guys with 30-plus rounds in their guns, while law-abiding citizens are equipped with less powerful guns available under the assault weapons ban. This gives criminals the upper hand in gun violence situations. We're not arguing that guns such as the AR-15 aren't powerful weapons. The affirming site has provided an abundance of information that drives this idea home. However, this is exactly why we need them. By having law-abiding citizens equipped with these weapons, they are more effective in saving lives in the event of an active shooting. Take this example from 2017. In Sutherland Springs, Texas, as gunmen opened fire on a church, local Stephen Williford grabbed his AR-15 rifle and ran barefoot to the building. When he located the shooter, he fired shots, which caused the gunman to flee in his vehicle armed. While Williford followed the shooter in the pickup truck, continuing to shoot and direct away from the scene of the crime. The gunman would then take his life, along with 26 others who died in the shooting. Imagine how many more innocent lives would have been lost without this intervention. Another thing we emphasized throughout our other speeches is the illegal trade. We maintain that it's a prominent issue that exists and will only grow with the 2023 ban in effect. Taking a look at its recent activity, in the 2016 Bureau of Justice survey of prison inmates found that 90% of prisoners who had a gun during their crime didn't get it from a retail source. According to Everytown Research, more than 99,000 traced crime guns were purchased with the intent to traffic them. Likewise, from 2010 through 2022, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Explosive Data showed that 60,000 crime guns were traced, originated from out of the state that they recovered in. Judges, we bring up these statistics to emphasize that an ongoing issue is not formally addressed by the assault weapons ban of 2023. With the way citizens are already disregarding the laws put into place, it is only logical to recognize that the movement of guns from legal to illegal streams of commerce will increase drastically with the ban in effect. Additionally, banning assault weapons is far from a fix-all solution. We can take a look at the deadliest shooting rampage in American history at Virginia Tech University, where a 23-year-old shooter shot and killed 33 people using a 9mm handgun and a .22 caliber handgun and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. Of the 10,258 gun murders in the U.S., handguns were used in 6,368 of them.
I'll get the Grand Crossfire now. Yeah, whenever you all.
All right. One of the things you've brought up with all three of your speakers now is the inefficacy or just the ability for this ban to not affect anything. How do you look at the numbers of not only the 1994 ban tracking a 70% decline in assault weapons related to crimes, but also the modern numbers of only 3.9 or 3.4 gun deaths in Massachusetts versus 33.9 in Mississippi, which has less gun control and no assault weapons ban, and say that's not going to save lives.
Well, you already mentioned that factors such as the increased minimum wage are like a big influence around that.
Yeah, but
So-
you see when there's less guns here and there's more of a capability for people to get help, that's why the violent crime is down, is because there's less guns. In addition to all these things, it's not just the guns, obviously. It's massively affected by the guns, though. Like, there's no guns to do these violent crimes with.
But most of them are taken from out of state, like how she said.
There's no way to stop a black market, even when things are legal. And I admit that, yes, there
That's
will
what
be
they did
more
in
illegal
Australia.
trade.
That's what
Well,
they-
Australia is irrelevant at that point because
No,
it's such a
it's not.
more extreme example than what we're doing here. But
because
going
it's,
back to the black
because
market,
it's such a big extreme example, that's like you're doing something that's lighter, and the big extreme, the best thing they could have done, did nothing for the violent crime rate. So
Oh, yeah.
you're saying you wanted to do a lighter ban. The lighter ban would then have no effect if the greater ban had no effect.
well, we're not Australia, and also we recognize that the Second Amendment is important and that American gun rights are important, and therefore we're not going to take all guns, we're not going to take handguns, we're not going to take non-assault weapons, and therefore we're not going to do that extreme of a ban, and people will still have self-defense for themselves, which is another thing you brought up, is minorities not being able to defend themselves when they're the ones most at risk. Besides your one very exception to the rule, Stephen Williford, when's the last time you've heard of someone defending themselves with an AR-15 casually? Most of the time there's a home intruder or a shooter of any kind, they're taken out with handguns, and if you have more than one example of someone using an AR-15 to defend themselves, then I'd love to hear it.
Additionally, we want to add that illegal purchases were only made by 13% of mass shooters. So what are you going to do with all the other percent that bought these guns legally?
Also, as we've already mentioned, depending on which source you look at, we do admit only 1% to 16% of shootings use assault weapons. Yet, as I mentioned in my point, 85% of letalities in shootings or gun-related deaths at all are from that 1 to 16%, proving how needlessly lethal they are. We don't need that in our system.
But how can the bill be effective if assault weapons make up such a small amount and, like you said, it's not nearly as drastic as like the Australian one?
Also, something I would like to bring up, Switzerland is another country that has a very extreme gun culture, but it has like a very low violent crime rate and gun death rate because of their red flag laws and things like that.
I'll reiterate that we are not Switzerland, just how we're not Japan or Australia.
All right, 4 apps.
Oh, can I get like a minute? Can we get a?
Oh yeah, you can take your prep time.
Okay. You never use the prep time.
Yeah. I mean,
I do. So I do have Okay, we're ready. Okay, so throughout this debate, we have argued that through the assault weapons ban of 2023, we plan to make a safer America for generations to come by reducing mass casualty gun violence. This bill makes it a crime to knowingly import, sell, manufacture, transport, or possess a semi-automatic assault weapon or large capacity ammunition feeding device. By enforcing this ban, we are banning assault weapons and large capacity magazines. We are giving people a chance to live due to the fact that having to reload every 10 rounds gives victims a chance to escape in the time it takes to reload. With evidence from the Crime Control Act of 1994, we saw that mass shooting fatalities were 70% less likely to occur compared to periods before and after the ban. And banning assault weapons does not infringe on the right to bear arms because individuals are still able to purchase and possess other types of firearms for self-defense, hunting, and recreation. We already acknowledge that a certain level of restriction on the right to bear arms is permissible, such as prohibiting children, felons, and the mentally ill from possessing firearms. But we also want to recognize that previous finding on handguns and mass shootings are null due to the fact that most handguns and mass shootings would still be prohibited under the 2023 assault weapons ban. Firstly, the opposing team argued that we were putting words in their mouths because we accused them that they did not have one solid definition of assault weapons. Meanwhile, in turn, they said that we do not care about mental health, when we never mentioned anything of the sort, especially when we have brought up that by enabling the assault weapons ban, we hope to create less of a fear of stigma around young adults who fear guns due to all the school shootings. The opposing side also lacked mentioning of many sources in the first speaker when bringing up the information about mental health and guns, ultimately providing no evidence and just talking. We have brought up that states with stricter gun laws have less gun murders than those with less control. And once again, banning assault weapons does not infringe on the right to bear arms because individuals are still able to purchase and possess other types of firearms for self-defense. Currently, we already have restrictions on gun laws. Oh, okay, I already read that. So why is enforcing the assault weapons ban a violation of gun rights when it has already been addressed that gun restrictions are indeed necessary to save the lives of Americans? While our opponent's standpoint on the assault weapons ban in 2023 is a relatively familiar one, it highlights troubling ethical hypocrisies between the value of life versus the value of guns. We have refuted point after point of the opposing side has made, for example, the efficiency of the ban, protection of gun rights, value of human lives, self-defense, and many more, such as the illegal trade concerns and irrelevant foreign ban comparisons. Our side only hopes to highlight that these contradictions to allow the opposing team to reconsider their relevance and accuracy of their views. While the opponent also
While the opponent also talks about other countries, they forget that
You can't speak. We also forget to, yeah, that's it. No, I didn't write that stuff. That's it. Yeah, that's my submission.
You're not a speaker.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth. As my fellows agreed on, I stand here saying that banning assault weapons won't stop mass shootings because homicides are the biggest percentage of use. Over banning what the bill concerns the assault weapons will not do enough to prevent harm and actively make the lives of Americans worse because it violates their constitutional rights to guns and individual rights granted in the Constitution. Assault weapons should not be banned because there are better ways, safer, and to approach. Existing gun laws in states such as California have been found ineffective, and type of gun used in most homicides is the handgun, 45% and 45.7%. There are better ways to prevent these shootings, such as addressing mental health issues, establishing red flag laws, and uniforming gun license. They're the ones that are deadly worse than assault weapons. People use gun violence as self-defense thing most of the time, and through that death are. Banning this weapon would result in more harm than good. Also, they should not be banned because they are a way to react to red flags laws moments. There are other issues that need to be addressed in order to stop these shootings, but the bill acknowledges none of them. Right of the people to keep beer armed. The Second Amendment speaks on right of the people to keep beer armed shall not be infringed. So the law violates the Second Amendment by infringing on the right to own guns. There is no doubt in our minds that gun makers will repeat this process under the 2023 assault weapons ban. Just as my fellow said, it would be a waste of precious time, money, resources to focus on banning something that has statistically shown to be used in small portion as mass gun violence in this country. I strongly agree with this because it would be unhelpful to waste money and time on this when it just gets worse if some states in the country have already banned assault weapons, but they still have mass shootings. It is any evidence that weapon is not the biggest target. It is impossible to know that the true number of murders involved. Assault weapons, because of the term, is inaccurate, and because of the FIBA only looks at the categories of rifles, shotguns, and handguns. This evidence is a self-perspective of this, that banning assault weapons is useless if they don't ban other kinds too. They might ban that, but they still see death of many people are caused by shotguns and handguns. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, shortening a gun barrel of few military or short using a rifle by removing a pistol grip or replacing with a number hole in the was sufficient to transfer a banned weapon into a large substitute. Intentionally to read, the American people don't read it. Not properly informed, age raised at 21, but people can join the military and use them at 18. Race can negatively impact BIPOC. The economy. We also want to bring attention to the load of the gun industry in our economy. According to research conducted by Zipper in 2003, the U.S. farm fire industry contributed $51 in bill to the economy and employ people across the U.S. with the banning state of these guns. A reform will be created with our economy. The base is that directly violates American right to protect defense themselves. The framework for today's bill is that the bill is not effective method of gun control and will fail to have true impact on gun violence in the state in the United States. There are better ways to prevent these shootings, such as addressing mental health issues, establishing national red flag uniform gun license. As guns have become a cultural and political symbol that our people want to secretly desire. Upon taking custody of the grandfather's semi-automatic assault weapon, the license shall comply with all requirements of this chapter. As if the license were transferred, the grandfather's semi-automatic assault weapon from the licensed factory of their transferee.
Good debate. Dr. Lane said that you all wanted me to make a decision about who won and who lost. So I think this was a good debate. I probably would have voted affirmative in this debate, and I think the big thing is they were a little more focused in terms of the impact that they were going for, and so I think that the affirmative is winning an argument that, while yes, the assault weapons ban might not lower crime rates, and it might not, totally be able to ban assault weapons, but that the availability of assault weapons for mass shooters would go down, and I think that's sort of like a distinction that you all haven't addressed. That like most mass shootings are with legally purchased guns, not illegally purchased guns, and that like things like the Virginia Tech example you brought up was sort of preempted by the affirmative and said like that was a handgun with a higher capacity magazine that would be banned. And so I think that probably the ban would make mass shootings less deadly, is I think what the AF has proved. And while that's like maybe only slightly a little bit better than the status quo, I think it's better than the status quo, and there's not, I don't think, a real big reason why the assault weapons ban would necessarily be bad, I guess, if that's a question, right? Or if that's if that makes sense. I think that to win, you sort of need to prove why the ban would be bad. I think you're getting there a little bit with some of the self-defense stuff. I think this is an area where you all could spend more time talking about, because I think you're right in cross-ex that most times guns are used in self-defense, probably generally it's not that successful, but I don't think it's well developed. My problem is just that since it's just an assault weapons ban, there's only kind of one point in the debate where you get to talking about why assault weapons are necessary for self-defense, if that makes sense. And their claim that like you still have a Second Amendment right because you still could get a handgun. You could still get like a rifle if it just doesn't have a high capacity mag and it's not like, you know, loading the cartridge or the next bullet after the spent cartridge is shot out, right? So I think that's enough to probably say like, I don't think there's a huge Second Amendment issue, and I don't know what the distinction in self-defense is, right? Like, could that guy in Texas have done the same thing with a handgun? I don't know that much about guns, so like maybe, probably, I don't know. And that's something I think you need to spend more time and focus more on that, and probably less on the Second Amendment stuff. And I think there's just like some, maybe like distractions here or there, where like some of the statistics you don't really need to get into about state by states. Like, I think really try and pick something why banning would be bad. I think the assault weapons are necessary for self-defense in these issues, in these situations is good. Build that case up a little bit more, and I think you're in a good spot. On the flip side, I think maybe like less focus on stats. You all are like really stats heavy in terms of like, here's like a ton of examples of the rate of death in these like large shootings going down. I think a little less time there, a little bit more time talking about the self-defense stuff, why like other things can work. Here's some stats about why self-defense is actually a bad thing or something like that. And I think that your sort of more of your bases are covered. And then I guess for both sides, like some of this like mental health is a more important thing. Like it doesn't end up mattering too much, I think. You're kind of like, well, they always say that, but it's like, they're not the GOP. They're just like your opponents in this debate advocating not to ban assault weapons, right? So you need to have like a better response, and you kind of get there eventually. You're like, it's not actually a mental health thing, it's other things. Plus, even if it is a mental health thing, like less guns equals less deaths is good. I think you all like similarly, like they're going to be like, yes, mental health is also an important thing. We shouldn't just ban guns. Like again, they're not like Democrats or whatever. This isn't Congress, so like some of those things are a little bit less relevant to the central question of like, should guns be banned, yes or no? And I think focusing more on that sort of central question is going to like make the debate a lot better. I guess that's the takeaway, since this is the like end of the debate or whatever. In the future, this focusing on that central question will make that sort of deliberation a lot easier. Do you have questions?
Thank you. Yeah.
Good debate, y'all.
How did it go?
I was trying to like go.
The takeaway, if it helps, is that I think kind of everybody either wins or loses in class like practice debates and stuff. It's just sort of like,
Yeah.
you know,
I'm not like upset.
what the takeaway afterwards, you're not going to remember who won or lost the debate.
You want to run?
I just leave this up with the
I'll take it. Yeah.
It was great. It was definitely